تحمل باب الرحمة عام 2003.
أكثر من 10,000 مصلي كانوا موجودين في الموقع. فتحنا الباب للمصلين.
My direct message to the Palestinian people is that despite what those who have let you down in the past tell you, President Trump and America have not given up on you.
Protesting a US-led peace conference in Bahrain that rolled out a US peace plan.
When they want to replace our political rights and substitute these rights with some financial promises, what do we tell them? Palestine is open for business because Palestine is full of innovation and creativity, but Palestine is not up for sale.
استخدمت الولايات المتحدة الكثير من وسائل الضغط.
Netanyahu is implementing the law withholding $138 million in Palestinian taxes in the face of widely reported warnings from his own security establishment.
That money is revenue that Israel collects on their behalf and then pays out.
لن نقبل استلام الأموال منقوصة شيئا. الأموال تحسمها إسرائيل أو تقسمها أو تسرقها.
An American consulate in Jerusalem that served as Washington's de facto diplomatic channel to Palestinians has closed its doors and will now move its mission into the new US embassy to Israel in that city.
إغلاق القنصلية الأمريكية هو إغلاق حقبة كاملة في التعامل الفلسطيني الأمريكي على مدار أكثر من 175 عام، وهذه سياسة أمر واقع تحاول الإدارة الأمريكية بالتعاون مع حكومة بنيامين نتنياهو أن تفرضها على أبناء شعبنا الفلسطيني بضرورة التعامل مع السفارة الأمريكية في القدس.
Voters are headed to the polls in Israel Tuesday as the country holds its second national election in 5 months.
אנחנו ננהל מסע בחירות חד, בהיר, ובו אנחנו ננצח, ואנחנו ננצח והציבור ינצח.
What we can expect is that after Netanyahu's failure to form a coalition government, the baton passes to Benny Gantz and he has 28 days.
President Reuven Rivlin on Thursday will inform the Knesset speaker that no candidate was able to form a government.
היום הודעתי לבאי כוחו של ראש הממשלה, מר בנימין נתניהו, על החלטתי להעמידו לדין בכתב אישום הכולל 3 אישומים.
כי הערב אנחנו עדים לניסיון של הפיכה שלטונית נגד ראש ממשלה, בעלילות שווא ובתהליך חקירות מזוהם ומגמתי.
An embarrassing court case could put him on the back foot going into a new election, because if there's no breakthrough after 21 days, the country will hold its third election in less than 12 months, the first time in Israel's history.
Since the unrest began in October, more than 300 people, mainly protesters, have been killed and thousands more injured.
UN Assistance Mission for Iraq said today that it has consistently called for the protection of peaceful protesters and the need to address their legitimate demands in the country.
نرفض أي رئيس وزراء ترشح الحكومة أو الأحزاب ونريد رئيس وزراء بانتخاب الشعب.
اليوم عندنا فقرة واحدة في هذه الجلسة الطارئة وهي تقديم استقالة الحكومة.
Lebanon is in the grip of unprecedented protests. 1.5 million people, that is a quarter of the population, to call for political and economic reform.
Their call has been for the complete removal of the government.
أنا طالع على أسرب عبده لتقديم استقالة الحكومة.
Supporters of two Shia movements have been fighting with anti-government protesters for the second night running.
A little-known university professor and former education minister, Hassan Diab, is now set to become Lebanon's new prime minister.
It's become a weekly affair. These Jordanians are protesting in central Amman against economic reforms proposed by their government. Jordan has a public debt of around $40 billion. That's as high as the country's GDP.
In a moment, I will sign a presidential proclamation recognizing Israel's sovereign right over the Golan Heights.
It marks a major shift in American policy on this matter.
President Trump's announcement that US troops would withdraw from the region
The U.S. military is pulling about 1,000 soldiers out of the combat zone.
The PKK, which is a part of the Kurds, as you know, is probably worse at terror and more of a terrorist threat in many ways than ISIS.
Turkey has just launched Operation Peace Spring in northeast Syria
to secure Turkey's border areas by eliminating terrorist elements and to allow the safe return of refugees into Syria.
Plans to target Syrian Kurdish YPG militia and Islamic State militants during the offensive.
President Trump vowed to destroy Turkey's economy if it went through with this kind of invasion.
The US continues to support it, arguing that it fought Daesh. But Ankara says the YPG is nothing more than a terrorist group.
But he did say that Erdogan has wanted to invade this area of Syria for a long time.
The government of Turkey informed my administration that they would be stopping combat and their offensive in Syria. I've therefore instructed the Secretary of the Treasury to lift all sanctions imposed on October 14th in response to Turkey's original offensive moves against the Kurds in Syria's northeast border region. So the sanctions will be lifted unless something happens that we're not happy with.
At least 7,000 people have reportedly been arrested in 28 of Iran's 31 provinces since mass protests broke out on the 15th of November.
Iran has acknowledged what many here already know. Security services killed protesters during demonstrations last month.
Iran has seized a British oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz.
Under international law, Iran had no right to obstruct the ship's passage, let alone board her. It was therefore an act of state piracy.
The Royal Marines homed in on an Iranian oil tanker.
Starting a conflict may be easy. Ending it would be impossible. Iran does not seek confrontation.
And this only goes to show what I'm saying about Iran. Trouble, nothing but trouble.
I am announcing our intent to designate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, including its Quds Force, as a foreign terrorist organization.
The forces backed by the United Arab Emirates over the weekend took over the southern capital, Aden.
هذا تم تحقيق انتصار كبير في العاصمة عدن.
وستستمر قواتنا المسلحة بمواصلة الجهود العسكرية والأمنية حتى يكون الجنوب سالما وآمنا ومحررا كاملا.
A power sharing agreement has been signed in Yemen.
This is a good step forward, an agreement that brings the Southern Transitional Council into the government.
A handshake between Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz and the Qatari Prime Minister.
For the first time in years, there are signs that the diplomatic dispute that has paralyzed the Gulf region may be easing.
We have moved from a stalemate to some progress where there are some talks.
After years of planning and several false starts, shares in Saudi Arabia's state-owned oil giant Aramco have begun trading on Riyadh's Tadawul exchange.
Revenues of Aramco will increase, which means that profitability of Aramco will increase.
Yemen's Houthi rebels have claimed a drone attack on the world's largest oil processing facility in Saudi Arabia, which sparked a huge fire.
If the Iranian regime and the IRGC, they are trying to hide any evidence from the component and with the technology, they are mistaken.
The Iran-aligned Yemen Houthis are said to have used 10 drones to target the Aramco petroleum processing facilities.
Heard from Iranian media and saying that these ships had been oil tankers that were set on fire. Then the UAE media came out and said, no, actually, this was all about sabotage.
It is the assessment of the United States government that the Islamic Republic of Iran is responsible for the attacks that occurred in the Gulf of Oman today.
Former President Mohamed Morsi died Monday after collapsing in a courtroom.
In 2012, he became Egypt's first democratically elected president and the first civilian to hold office.
Muhammad Ali started posting videos on YouTube and Facebook in early September.
لازم نمشي النهارده
لازم نصر إن يمشوا النهاردة.
He alleged Sisi and his military wasted millions of dollars of public money on palaces, villas and hotels.
Thousands of people are protesting across Egypt, calling on President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to resign.
At least 40 people were killed and dozens more were injured when an airstrike hit a migrant detention center in Libya.
A volley of rockets on the Libyan capital in the dead of night.
Libya's eastern forces under leader Khalifa Haftar are showing their intent to take over the Libyan capital and overthrow the government backed by the UN.
For weeks, Algeria has been rocked by widespread protests. The spark for the mass demonstrations was the announcement that the ailing president Abdelaziz Bouteflika would be seeking a fifth term in office.
It's the moment millions of Algerians had been demanding. A frail-looking Abdelaziz Bouteflika handed over his resignation letter.
The polls are open, but not everyone's rushing to vote.
We don't want elections with this gang. You're all thieves. You're a gang of thieves.
السيد عبد المجيد تبون ب 58.15%.
After 30 years in power, President Omar al-Bashir has been forced out of power by the country's military. The army has dissolved the government and declared a state of emergency.
Celebrations in the capital Khartoum as a political standoff de-escalates.
Smiles and handshakes all around over a power-sharing agreement. During the 3-year transition period, the new ruling body would be led by the military half of the time, with a civilian leader at the helm for the other 18 months.
So the passing of President Beji Caid Essebsi marks the end of an era.
Caid Said, a political outsider and retired law professor, was sworn in as Tunisian president on Wednesday.
Hajar Sunni stands accused of having a late-term abortion and sexual relations out of wedlock.
The defense team was able to establish scientifically that there was no abortion, and that's why the verdict came as a shock to many.